His touches awakened my spirit. His kisses were so cool and armless, soft, like a breeze gliding across my skin. When he grabbed my waist, it was not just physical. It felt like someone finally saw through the woman I had buried under years of loneliness and quiet desperation. He was not my lover. He was not even supposed to look at me that way. But he did. Every time my mother stepped out, sometimes just to get groceries, sometimes to visit her sister, it happened. At first, it was accidental. A glance that lingered too long. A touch on the back that made me freeze and question if I had imagined it. But I had not. He knew. And I knew. And it kept happening. Each time, deeper. Each time, darker. It is strange how you can live under the same roof with someone, share meals, smile across the table, and still be drowning in secrets so heavy they suffocate you in your sleep. I tried to fight it. I told myself it was wrong, I told myself it would end, but the more I resisted, the deeper I fell. Into him. Into this twisted bond that felt so wrong but fed something in me I did not even know was starving. Now, years later, I carry the weight of what happened, every kiss, every whisper, every lie, with me. And tonight, I am ready to share it. Before I dive in, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to this channel. You are the reason I am still able to keep telling these deep, personal, and emotional stories. And if you are new here or have been watching without subscribing, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button. It is the fuel that powers this channel, and your support means more than I can say. Do not forget to drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Rachel. I am 33 years old. I live in a quiet suburb in upstate New York. People think my life is picture perfect, blonde hair, polite smile, clean home. I work part-time at a local wellness center and do some journaling on the side. Nothing about me screams drama. But that is the thing about people like me, we are the best at hiding chaos behind quiet. When I was 24, my father passed away after a long illness. My mother, who had always been strong-willed and sharp, fell apart in silence. She tried to keep going, and within 2 years, she married again. That man was Richard. Richard was calm, soft-spoken, and attentive to my mother. He had no kids of his own and treated me like I was a friend rather than a stepdaughter. We were not close at first. Just polite. I respected him, but I did not see him as anything beyond my mother's new husband. But then things began to shift. It started with small things. He would ask for my opinion on things, movies, politics, wine. He started making me coffee in the mornings when I was visiting. He would brush against me in the kitchen or compliment how I looked in ways that made my heart race. It should have disgusted me. But it did not. It stirred something. I had just gotten out of a dead relationship. My self-esteem was in pieces. Richard noticed me. And I liked it. One evening, my mother had gone to her sister's house to stay overnight. I was in the living room watching a crime series, and Richard joined me. He sat closer than usual. I could feel the tension. The silence between us was not awkward, it was electric. And then it happened. He leaned in, not fast, not rough, just close enough for me to know what he wanted. He paused as if waiting for me to pull away. But I did not. I do not know why. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe I was curious. Or maybe some twisted part of me wanted to feel wanted again. I let him kiss me. And I kissed him back. The next morning, I hated myself. I could not look at him. I avoided my mother. But Richard acted like nothing had happened. That made it worse. It made me feel like I had imagined everything. But later that week, when my mother went to the pharmacy, he found me again. And I let him. This was not love. It was something else, some dangerous emotional fusion of power, need, secrecy, and guilt. I started noticing how my mother looked at us during dinners. I started feeling exposed, like she could smell the betrayal in the air. But I kept going back. Because stopping felt impossible. It was not about the romance anymore. It was about control. It was about fear. It was about addiction. I knew it could not last. I knew there would be consequences. But I did not know how explosive they would be, or how deeply the truth would destroy everything. The night my mother finally found out was the night my entire life fell apart. But I will tell you about that. I knew I had crossed a line that should have never existed in the first place. But the problem with forbidden things is, once you taste them, it becomes harder to turn back. That was what Richard had become to me. An addiction I could not control. Not because I loved him, not because I wanted to ruin anything, but because, for the first time in a long while, someone made me feel seen, wanted, and alive. The guilt grew heavier with every kiss. And so did the need. My mother remained blissfully unaware, or at least, that was what I chose to believe. She carried on like nothing had changed. Still trusting, still affectionate toward both of us. She never questioned why Richard and I seemed to sit closer than we used to. She never questioned why I suddenly started showing up at their house more often. And I never gave her a reason to. But one evening changed the rhythm of it all. It was a Saturday. My mother had been invited to a women's retreat out of town, and I was staying at their place, helping Richard reorganize the garage. That was the excuse we gave her. The moment she pulled out of the driveway, it was like a switch flipped. He touched my hand as he handed me a box, and that single touch turned into something more. We ended up in the basement, on an old couch, the air thick with tension and betrayal. It felt wrong, like every other time before, but this time, it also felt reckless. I remember lying on his chest afterward, staring at the cobwebs in the corners of the ceiling, wondering how much longer we could go on before it all came crashing down. That night, I did not sleep. Every sound made my heart jump. Every passing car felt like a warning. I lay in my old bedroom, haunted by the sound of my mother's laughter in my head, her trust, her softness, the way she always defended me. The shame was no longer hidden. It was growing like rot inside my chest. Weeks passed, but things were not the same. My mother started acting different. She asked more questions, subtle, but probing. "Rachel, is everything okay between you and Richard?" I always nodded, faked a smile, and changed the subject. But she was noticing. One evening, she stared at me for a long time over dinner and said, "You have been spending a lot of time around here lately. Everything all right at your apartment?" My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. I felt Richard's hand under the table twitch. He kept chewing, eyes down. I lied again. "Just been feeling a bit lonely. I guess I miss you guys." That seemed to soften her. She reached over, rubbed my hand, and said, "You can always come home, baby." And that nearly broke me. Richard, on the other hand, was growing bolder. More reckless. He would touch me while my mother was just upstairs. He would corner me in the hallway, whisper things in my ear that made my skin crawl with a mix of guilt and desire. At one point, I began avoiding their house, trying to create space. But then he would call. Text. Ask me to come over when my mother was out running errands. And stupidly, I would go. The worst part? I started telling myself lies. That maybe my mother and Richard were no longer intimate. That maybe she did not love him anymore. That maybe what we had was not really hurting her. But I knew better. Deep down, I always knew better. Then came the twist I never expected. One afternoon, I came over thinking my mother had gone to a church function. Richard and I were in the kitchen, alone, or so we thought. He had just kissed me, his hand brushing down my back, when a sound came from the hallway. A gasp. I froze. He stepped back. My blood turned to ice. My mother was standing by the stairwell, one hand covering her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief. Her purse slipped from her shoulder and landed with a dull thud on the floor. For a moment, time stood still. She did not scream. She did not cry. She just stared at us, her face slowly changing from confusion to horror to something far worse, understanding. Then she turned around and walked out the front door. I could not move. My legs felt like concrete. I looked at Richard, expecting him to say something. But he looked just as stunned. For once, the man who always had a sly word ready was speechless. And in that silence everything shattered. I tried calling her that night. She did not pick up. I left voicemails. I cried. I sat on the floor of my apartment, rocking back and forth, feeling like my entire soul was cracking open. Richard texted me once, "We need to talk." I never replied. The days that followed were like watching my life collapse in slow motion. My mother told everyone I had betrayed her. She packed up and moved out of the house. Filed for divorce. Cut me out of her life completely. My phone number was blocked. My emails bounced. Richard disappeared. I heard rumors he had left the state. And just like that, I became the woman who broke her own mother's heart. The woman who betrayed the only person who ever truly loved her without condition. People think the worst part of betrayal is being caught. It is not. The worst part is living with what you did, knowing you can never take it back. But there is still one chapter left. And in it, you will see how karma came for me in the most unexpected way. They say guilt is like rust, it does not always scream, it corrodes quietly, slowly, until the structure of your soul collapses. That is exactly what happened to me. The betrayal I committed did not just destroy my mother's marriage. It destroyed me from within, piece by painful piece. After she found out about me and Richard, she vanished from my life completely. I tried everything, letters, voice messages, even showing up at her workplace, but the woman who once held me when I cried, who gave me everything, looked at me like a stranger. A stranger she could never trust again. And maybe she was right. Richard, the man I once thought I wanted, became a shadow. I heard nothing from him after that one final text. Maybe it was guilt that made him disappear. Maybe it was cowardice. All I knew was that the man who had used me in my weakness had fled when consequences came knocking. And me? I was left alone to deal with the silence, the shame, and the voices in my head. My apartment became a cage. I stopped going out. Friends called, but I ignored them. I had no energy to explain the shame that clung to me like a second skin. I lost weight. Stopped answering emails. Even my job began to slip from my fingers because I just could not function. One morning, I woke up on my bathroom floor after a long night of crying, my face swollen and puffy, my throat raw from silent screams. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself one question: how did I get here? I had once been a hopeful girl. I had dreams, ambition, self-worth. But now, I was just the woman who had done the unforgivable. 3 months after my mother left, I got a letter. No name on the envelope, just my address in her handwriting. I ripped it open with trembling hands, desperate for something, anything. The letter was short. You destroyed more than my marriage. You destroyed the last thing I believed was pure, my love for you. I hope someday you understand what you have done. And I hope that pain eats you alive, the way your betrayal did to me. It was not a threat. It was not even angry. It was worse. It was final. That letter broke something in me that had been hanging by a thread. I sat on my kitchen floor for hours, rereading it, feeling every word stab through me like a knife. She was not coming back. Not today. Not ever. And the worst part? I could not blame her. I started therapy. I knew that if I kept living in that guilt, it would bury me. So I walked into a stranger's office one Monday morning and laid out my shame, like rotten fruit, for someone else to examine. It was humiliating. But necessary. I admitted to everything. The moments I should have walked away but did not. The feelings I confused for love. The times I lied to protect a man who never once tried to protect me. Week after week, my therapist peeled back the layers I had buried deep. And I began to see how much of what happened was not just about lust or desire, it was about my need to feel needed. My hunger for validation. My weakness. It did not excuse what I did. But it helped me understand how I got there. Years passed. I moved to another town. Changed jobs. Tried to build a quieter life. But the shadow of that betrayal followed me everywhere. I never entered another serious relationship. I could not bring myself to. Not when I still felt unworthy of love. One night, after years of silence, I received an unexpected phone call. It was my aunt. She told me my mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Advanced stage. Not much time left. My heart sank. My hands trembled. And in that moment, I knew, I had to try. One last time. I flew down to the hospital the next morning. My mother was weak, thin, and pale. Her once bright hair now gray, her eyes tired. She looked older, smaller. When I walked into the room, she did not scream. She did not cry. She turned away. I stood by her bed and whispered, "I am sorry." She said nothing. I sat there for hours. Told her about my therapy. My life now. My regrets. How I would never forgive myself for what I did to her. And even though she never looked me in the eye, I felt like she was listening. Just before I left, she whispered, "I loved you more than myself. That is why it hurts the most." And that was the last thing she ever said to me. My mother passed away 2 weeks later. I was not invited to the funeral. To this day, I still live with the consequences of my actions. The betrayal, the loss, the silence. I tell this story not to ask for sympathy, but to show how one choice, one weakness, can change everything. To anyone out there walking the edge of betrayal, think twice. The damage you cause may never heal. And even if it does, you may not be there to witness it. Thank you to everyone who has listened to my story. If you found any truth, pain, or strength in it, please share your thoughts in the comments. And if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, I truly hope you do. Your support is what helps us keep sharing these raw, real, and deeply human stories.